The government is going to debate the Coronavirus Act. In other words, the emergency powers will be continued. The Prime Minister today in a speech ominously said the COVID crisis has proved that we must listen to the scientists. We must listen to the science. Usually when he says things like that, it's the prelude to some sort of lockdown or more restrictions on our freedom. He says we must listen to the scientists, but of course that's unless those scientists are from the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation and they're advising against vaccinating children. At that point, the Prime Minister chooses not to listen to the scientists, but to go ahead and vaccinate children anyway. So he's not particularly consistent on all this, but it is quite worrying and ominous that they're making all the wrong noises as we approach winter.
I hate to bring some pessimism to your show, Kevin, but I'm very, very pessimistic about the prospect of Christmas now. I've been having any kind of freedom over the winter holidays. I'm sure that Boris Johnson will come out over the next few weeks, just like he did last year, and say, oh, we're having a big push to save Christmas. And then, of course, it won't materialise. We can see it already. We're going to have another socially distanced Christmas with Granny sat at the bottom of the garden and an elaborate series of levers to get her Christmas dinner to her. I feel like I'm going insane. Am I the only one who remembers what it was like last year? Why are we going back to that? Are we going to go back to a time where it was genuinely unclear whether or not it's legal to sit on a park bench and have a coffee, and when people were being arrested for walking in the countryside with a friend? Why are we going back there? It doesn't make any sense.
Absolutely. What seems to be now on the agenda year after year, they set the precedent last year. You know, the idea that the government, that its primary job is to look after our health. And in pursuit of that heady aim, they'll lock us down, they'll take away our freedoms, they'll make us stand 2 meters away from each other. That became acceptable. And to the government, it looks like they're set to do it again. What worries me is this idea that it is the government's job to be our doctor. It's not. It's my job to look after my health, not the government's, and yet it's taken this on board, and it assumes that in pursuit of keeping the nation healthy, keeping the nation free from various viruses, it is allowed to do virtually anything to us.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, Kevin, a very worrying precedent that's being set by this pandemic that could stretch into the future, that the government can roll back our freedoms at will in order to do things that are in our own interests, as it would tell us. If we can't have a normal Christmas this year, that means we can't have a normal Christmas ever again. Because last year, when people were talking about how necessary and vital these restrictions were, the argument that was always made is we need to get out of the other side of the pandemic. Well, we are out of the other side of the pandemic, so now's the time to go back to normal. But of course, at the root of the issue is that the people in government making these rules, they don't care. Matt Hancock knows that he can shut his office door and do what he likes. Dominic Cummings can go on his cross-country expeditions, and Neil Ferguson can have his extramarital romps, and Boris and Carrie can have their friends over for Christmas. They know the rules don't apply to them, and so they don't care about you and me having our Christmas ruined.
Yeah, you're right. While you, me, and everybody else were unable to see our friends or our loved ones, Boris and Carrie worked out a way of getting around the rules. I don't think they broke the rules, but they certainly didn't obey the spirit of the rules, and they had Carrie's best chum over for the festivities, which I think is a very, very bad look. But it's typical. You got Dominic Cummings, Matt Hancock. They make all these rules, love to inflict these rules on us, don't particularly like obeying them themselves.
Exactly right. Yeah, and this is the problem when you have government interfering in this way. You always find that the law does not apply equally. The people at the top of the chain, it turns out there were all kinds of exceptions that we didn't know about, and that there were exemptions. If you need to test your eyesight, you're allowed to drive a car to the nearby tourist attraction.
To the nearest castle. I tell you, it's crazy, but fingers crossed we'll have a free winter. But as you say, the portents and the signs are ominous. The same noises. We must follow the science. Unless it's the JCVI saying something we don't want them to say, then we won't follow the science. It's one rule for them and another for the rest of us, Jason. Great to talk, and let's do it again next week. Jason Reed. read there from the head of, well, he's the head of the Young Voices UK organisation. Very fine organisation that is too.